Most people believe protection in a Belgian Malinois looks obvious. They expect barking, lunging, visible tension, or dramatic warning signals before anything serious happens. That assumption alone creates one of the most dangerous misunderstandings owners carry. Because the true protection instinct of this breed rarely announces itself in ways civilians recognize. A Belgian Malinois does not protect emotionally. It protects through assessment. Before movement ever happens, a silent internal evaluation is already underway. And by the time you see physical action, the decision was made long before. This is where many owners misread the breed entirely. They interpret calm as comfort. They interpret stillness as neutrality. They interpret silence as absence of concern. But silence in a Malinois is often the opposite of indifference. It is attention without display. It is calculation without emotion. It is control without noise. Protection in this breed is not reactive. It is measured. It is not about anger or fear. It is about clarity. When something changes in the environment, the Malinois registers it immediately. Not loudly, not theatrically, but completely. A stranger's posture shifts slightly. A voice tone tightens. A movement feels misplaced in context. The Malinois does not overreact, but it does not dismiss it either. Instead, it stores the information. It watches patterns. It compares present behavior against what it already understands about normalcy. This is why the breed can appear relaxed, even when tension is rising. Because outward relaxation does not equal internal disengagement, the dog may lie down while its awareness intensifies. It may look away while its perception sharpens. Owners often mistake this duality for balance. They believe their dog is fine because there is no immediate reaction. But the Malinois is not deciding based on emotion in the moment. It is deciding based on threshold. Every Malinois has a protection threshold. That threshold is not based on ego. It is based on responsibility. Responsibility to what it considers its role. Responsibility to territory. Responsibility to the individual it has aligned itself with. When alignment is strong, protection is precise. When leadership feels unstable, protection becomes more self-directed. And this is where problems quietly begin. Because a Malinois that no longer fully trusts your judgment does not abandon protection. It internalizes it. Instead of checking with you through subtle signals, it may begin skipping that step. Instead of glancing for confirmation, it may simply continue its internal evaluation uninterrupted. And that shift is almost invisible until the moment it matters. Many incidents that appear sudden were never sudden. They were the final moment of a long internal process. A process the owner never noticed because nothing dramatic occurred beforehand. Protection was building quietly, not escalating emotionally, not signaling theatrically, just clarifying. The Malinois does not protect out of chaos. It protects out of conviction. And conviction is not loud. This is why highly trained military and police handlers respect the breed's silence. They understand that stillness is often the prelude to action. They do not mistake calm for passivity. In civilian homes, however, that silence is often misread. Owners assume their dog is socially tolerant because it does not bark at guests. They assume it is relaxed because it does not pace. They assume it is friendly because it does not growl. But protection in a Malinois is not about constant signaling. It is about internal permission, and once that permission is granted internally, it does not require noise. A shift in energy is enough. A violation of boundary is enough. A repeated pattern that crosses threshold is enough. And the frightening part for unprepared owners is this. The dog may not give a second warning. Because from its perspective, the warning phase already happened internally. The evaluation phase already concluded. The outcome was decided before you knew a test was occurring. This is the protection instinct they hide. Not maliciously, not unpredictably, but quietly. A Malinois does not advertise its readiness. It simply maintains it. Even during play, even during calm moments, even during apparent distraction, it is always tracking, always comparing, always contextualizing. That does not mean it is unstable. It means it is wired for responsibility. But responsibility without guidance can become self-appointed authority. And when a Malinois begins acting as its own final decision-maker in protection matters, the risk multiplies. Not because the dog is aggressive, but because it no longer feels the need to consult you. This is the moment many owners realize too late what was happening all along. They thought obedience equaled trust. They thought calm equaled neutrality. They thought silence meant nothing was brewing beneath the surface. But beneath the surface, protection was calibrating itself. Not emotionally, logically. The Malinois protection instinct is not about domination. It is about control of outcome. And if the dog does not believe you control the outcome effectively, it may begin preparing to do so itself. That preparation is invisible. It shows up as prolonged observation, as subtle repositioning, as small physical adjustments that seem meaningless to the untrained eye. A Malinois may place itself between you and a person without growling. It may stand slightly closer when someone speaks loudly. It may shift weight forward while remaining perfectly still. These are not random behaviors. They are protective calculations. When those calculations reach certainty, movement is not chaotic. It is precise. And that precision is what makes the breed so respected in elite environments. But it is also what makes mismanagement so dangerous in civilian ones. Because you do not get theatrical escalation first. You get quiet alignment followed by decisive action. Most people are prepared for barking. They are not prepared for silence followed by clarity. The Malinois hides protection not because it wants to surprise you. It hides it because constant display would be inefficient. The instinct is conserved until it matters. And that conservation makes it powerful. When a Malinois trusts you completely, that power remains guided. It checks in subtly. It waits microseconds for alignment. It allows you to override perception. But when trust erodes, even slightly, the microsecond disappears. And that is where things change. The dog no longer hesitates in uncertainty. It resolves it. This is why leadership with this breed is not about dominance. It is about consistent clarity. Because clarity prevents silent recalibration. And silent recalibration is where the protection instinct begins drifting into independence. A Malinois that believes you see what it sees will wait. A Malinois that believes you miss what it sees will not. That is the dividing line. And once that line is crossed internally, the protection instinct no longer feels like a shared responsibility. It feels personal. That is when owners say the behavior came out of nowhere, but it never did. It was always there. Just hidden, just patient, just evaluating. Protection in a Belgian Malinois is not emotional attachment. It is structural alignment. When structure is strong, protection is clean. When structure weakens, protection becomes self-directed. The instinct itself is not the problem. The misunderstanding of it is. A Malinois does not need to appear aggressive to be ready. It does not need to posture to be prepared. It does not need to vocalize to have already decided. And by the time you see visible intensity, the invisible process has long since concluded. That is the protection instinct Belgian Malinois hide. Not for drama, not for shock, but because silence is efficient. And efficiency, in this breed, is everything. Most civilian environments are filled with inconsistent signals. Guests enter unpredictably. Children move erratically. Voices rise and fall emotionally. Energy fluctuates constantly. A Malinois absorbs all of it. Not emotionally overwhelmed, not confused, but scanning for coherence. If coherence exists, the dog relaxes within structure. If coherence feels unstable, protection begins adjusting internally. You may never see tension in the body. You may never hear a growl, but you might notice the dog watching longer than usual. That longer watch is not anxiety. It is assessment. And assessment in this breed does not end until a conclusion is reached. When a Malinois concludes someone is safe, it moves on fully. When it concludes someone is uncertain, it does not forget. It simply stores the variable. That stored variable can resurface weeks later if patterns repeat. Not because the dog holds grudges, but because it remembers inconsistencies. This memory makes the breed extraordinary in high-level work. It also makes casual ownership risky when leadership is inconsistent. Because a Malinois does not rely on your emotional reassurance, It relies on structural proof. If your reaction to a suspicious moment is hesitant, the dog notes it. If you dismiss something that feels wrong to the dog, the gap widens. The instinct does not disappear. It recalibrates. And recalibration is silent. There is a specific shift that happens before a Malinois fully activates protection. It stops looking for external validation. It begins trusting its own interpretation exclusively. That shift is subtle. The dog may still respond to commands. It may still appear cooperative, but internally, it no longer waits for your read of the situation. It trusts itself first. This does not make the dog disloyal. It makes it autonomous. Autonomy in a protection-driven breed is powerful. It is also heavy. Because autonomous protection means decisions are made without delay, and delay is often the only buffer that prevents escalation in everyday settings. When alignment is strong, you are that buffer. When alignment weakens, the buffer shrinks. And what remains is instinct without pause. Elite handlers understand something most owners never consider. They do not try to suppress the protection instinct. They integrate with it. They maintain clarity so the dog never feels alone in responsibility. Because a Malinois that feels alone in responsibility will eventually assume full control of it. Control without partnership is where incidents originate. Not from aggression, not from unpredictability, but from silent responsibility taken too seriously. The breed is not dangerous by nature. It is decisive by design. And decisiveness without shared clarity becomes unilateral action. The protection instinct of a Belgian Malinois is not something you turn on. It is something that is always present, simply waiting for context. That presence is what makes the breed extraordinary. It is also what demands respect. A Malinois does not wake up one day and decide to protect differently. It adjusts gradually based on what it perceives around it. If it perceives strength, it supports it. If it perceives confusion, it compensates. And compensation in a protection-driven breed is rarely obvious until the moment it is exercised. This is why so many owners describe their dog as perfect, right up until an incident. The dog was not perfect. It was calculating. It was patient. It was silent. It was watching. And once its internal threshold was crossed, it acted with the clarity it had been building for weeks or months. The solution is not fear of the instinct. It is understanding of it. A Malinois does not need to be softened. It needs alignment. Because when alignment is strong, the protection instinct remains powerful but measured. It remains decisive but guided. It becomes an asset rather than a risk. The instinct is not the enemy. Misinterpretation is. And the moment you understand that protection in this breed is quiet, long before it is visible, you stop looking for noise as proof of readiness. You begin looking for alignment instead. That is the difference between managing a powerful dog and partnering with one. And for a Belgian Malinois, partnership is the only safe way to hold that level of instinct.